He missed. Not by much, maybe a breath off center, but enough for the wind to catch the bullet and pull it wide. Enough that the target's left shoulder jerked instead of his heart exploding, and she knew, even before the echo faded, that the report would still say he made the shot. The dust hadn't even settled around the abandoned safehouse compound, and already Brooks was yelling into his cums, praising Cade for the takedown. "Nice work, Sniper 1. 1 round, 1 down textbook." Cade didn't correct him, and she didn't say a word. Instead, she moved her cheek back to the scope, tightened her grip on the cheek rest of the suppressed .308, and recalculated wind with the quick, quiet math she'd learned from her father. On the back porch in South Texas, wind speed over elevation. Target weight, distortion shimmer. One eye squinted. The other locked in. The second round landed exactly where the first should have. Target neutralized. Cade still stood tall in the brush 30 yards to her right, perched higher on a crumbled ledge. Weapon lowered, smirking, she exhaled. She knew how this would go. Knew it like the feel of a rifle bolt sliding home. And she could already hear what the official report would say. Sniper 1, kill confirmed. Sniper 2, support. But she had other plans for how the story would end. The first time she met Cade wasn't on the range. It was in the gear shack on base 2 weeks prior, when he'd made a crack about her cleaning solvent smelling like her perfume. She hadn't looked up. Just kept disassembling her rifle in practiced motions. "Don't take it personal," he added. "I'm sure you're decent with a scope, just not sure what you're doing in this unit." She'd blinked slowly and said nothing. She didn't need to justify her slot. Her file already had. Not that Cade had read it. Most of them hadn't. It was easier to see her as the diversity placement, the legacy assignment, the charity slot handed to Ryder's daughter after her father had died. In the line of duty, but none of them knew the hours she'd put in. The backyard drills. The glass marbles on fence posts at 90 meters. The pre-dawn runs with her father's dog tags tucked under her sports bra like armor, or the vow she'd made at the funeral. "I'm not going to wear his name, I'm going to earn it." So she let Cade's remarks slide. Let the laughter from the other 2 techs fade into the metal walls of the shack. Let the whole place underestimate her, because underestimating her had always been their first mistake. The weeks leading up to the safehouse operation were quiet but sharp. Field drills, evac protocol refreshers, crosswind simulations. They trained from sunup to moonrise, rotating squads in and out of live-fire zones. She held her own in every scenario, logging top-range precision scores. Still, Cade was always the one they called on for final evaluations. It didn't bother her, not outwardly, but every time he slapped the results board and grinned, like he was already on the cover of Tier 1 Quarterly, she felt the quiet edge of something coil tighter in her gut. She didn't need applause. She needed accuracy. And when she wasn't in drills, she was on her own. Dry firing. Adjusting the zero. Calibrating her backup optics. Cleaning gear while the others hit the rec room. There was a rhythm to mastery, and she knew its beat. She still had the voice of her mother, a combat medic, in her ear from childhood. Don't ever be the one who hesitates. Not when it counts. So she didn't. Not when the compound perimeter was breached. Not when the first flashbang echoed. Not when Cade missed. Not when it mattered. Drop A if you've ever been underestimated. Ever been told to wait your turn only. To realize they never planned to let you go. Hit that like button. They debriefed under a half-busted ceiling fan in a makeshift command tent an hour later. Cade had already cracked a cold pack, lounging like a minor celebrity while the analysts pulled drone footage from the op. Brooks pointed at the feed. "Beautiful work. That first shot, it'll make the highlight reel." Cade winked, and she said nothing until Brooks paused the video, rewound, tilted his head. "Hold on. That's a 2-second delay between report echoes." "There's a second." Muzzle flare. Silence. Cade froze. Probably a ricochet. Brooks narrowed his eyes. Ricochet would have sounded different. You missed? Cade opened his mouth, then closed it, and she watched. Watched the moment the doubt slipped in. Watched the spotlight shift. Watched the truth start to unfold on footage. Not on words, but the final report still credited Cade, not because of proof. Because of politics. And when she received her copy, stamped in red ink with Support Unit B, she folded it once and tucked it behind a row of maintenance logs, then went back to the range. 3 days later, she got the call, a new op. High value. High stakes, but this time, Brooks didn't call her Sniper 2. This time he just said, "We need you. Bring your kit. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from." If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Exhaustion set in before dawn even broke, but the static of adrenaline kept her steady. Grazing fire erupted at the eastern perimeter. The compound security team scrambled as tracer rounds stitched the night sky. 1 second, 2, then silence. Before the world rumbled, her breath caught in her chest. Light painted the shattered remains of the safe house in amber as she pivoted on her heel. Scanning the tree line, her hands moved with merciless precision, slinging her rifle, chambering around, and slapping the safety off before most of her unit even realized what was happening. Every muscle hummed with the familiarity of drills run before sunup. Every heartbeat echoed the promise she'd whispered at her father's grave. "I will not falter." A mortar round detonated behind her, rocking the cracked concrete beneath her boots. The ground trembled. Dust filled the air. She dropped to one knee and, sighted through the darkness, found the silhouette, creeping between broken walls. The target's shoulder rose as he peered through a mirrored lens. He didn't see the slight tilt of her rifle, didn't hear the whisper of the suppressed round, didn't feel the warmth of the bullet. He slumped. "Droppa, if you've ever felt the calm before a storm." Her radio crackled. "Sniper 2, Brooks' voice caught, urgent. "We've got hostiles flanking north. Get eyes on that ridge." She didn't hesitate, calibrating her scope mid-motion. She tracked the movement, a pair of figures slipping through brush, unaware. Backstory thread. Rumors had swirled about her pedigree long before she signed in. Son of a renowned sniper, daughter of a combat medic, some said she inherited both talents like heirlooms. Others whispered she'd been a child prodigy, hitting bullseyes at distances seasoned shooters swore were fiction. But no one saw the hours she spent alone in abandoned fields. No one knew about the cold nights when she soaked her hands in icy water to steady them, or the mornings she rose before the sun to recalculate trajectories. All they saw was her smile, quiet, unreadable, and a reputation she'd yet to claim. Inciting incident. A bellowing crack split the air as the enemy called out commands in a guttural dialect. They'd pinned down her squad under suppressive fire, forcing them to take cover behind rusted barrels. The communication jammers the techs installed flickered and died, leaving Brooks shouting coordinates that disappeared into static. It was chaos, exactly the kind of chaos she thrived in. She rose, ducked under the barrel, and sprinted across. Jagged terrain, rifles slung but ready. Each step was a promise. She would hold them, audience prompt. Ever stepped up when no one else would? Hit like. Audience prompt. Comment below if you've ever been the unsung hero. Crisis and reveal. She paused 20 meters from the ridge, heart pounding like an engine. The hostiles reloaded, shoulders dropping, eyes narrowing. She set the bipod, nestled her cheek against the stock, and exhaled. The first shot cut through the night, dropping the lead. No flash, no fanfare. Just quiet precision. The second shot cracked like thunder, breaking their formation. The third was a whisper too fast to trace. 3 kills, 3 silences, 3 fallen lives. She stood, rifle still steady, as the squad advanced. Resolution and reflection. By sunrise the ridge was clear. Her team regrouped, panting in the pale light. Kate appeared at her side, eyes wide. "You were," he began. She holstered her rifle. "I was where I needed to be." No one spoke. The wind carried the faint echo of her bullets, a testament she didn't need written, and for the first time, she saw them look at her differently, not as Sniper 2, but as Sniper 1. The morning sun glinted off her scope as Brooks approached. Offering a nod instead of a grin, she tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear and walked away from the ridge, the weight of her name resting lightly on her shoulders. And the operation wasn't over yet. Tomorrow, the targets change, and so will the stakes. The operation wasn't over yet. The transport rumbled across uneven terrain, pitching softly as the tires hugged a barely visible path through a gorge choked with switchbacks and sand-slick stone. Inside, heat pressed in from every angle. No AC, no comfort. Just Kevlar, shadows, and the scent of steel. She kept her head low and her rifle across her knees. Barrel pointed toward the floor, bolt unlocked but ready. The others were quiet. Too, not out of reverence, out of calculation. Every person in the transport knew this wasn't going to be a clean entry. She'd reviewed the SAT images 6 times before dawn. 3 entry points, 1 viable high post. 0 room for error. It wasn't just about being first on the trigger. It was about who would still be standing when the last round dropped. Brooks sat up front, radio in one hand, fingers twitching at the edge of a paper map folded a dozen times. His face hadn't relaxed since briefing. "Neither had hers. Sniper with me," he said without looking back. She didn't ask which one, because this time, only one of them had been called. The outpost wasn't abandoned, though the intel had promised otherwise. As they approached, the glint of movement shimmered beyond the rise, half reflection, half mirage. But she caught it, scoped it, noted the tilt of the helmet, the odd, rigid way the figure leaned too far forward on the slope. "Decoy," she whispered. Brooks paused. "Sure." She adjusted her lens. "Tripwire at the boots. Motion rigged. Options? Ghost him. Reroute north. Elevation gain puts us above the thermal range. 2 minutes added. Safer window." Brooks tapped his mic. "Delta shift north. Ghost the decoy. Sniper's call." And just like that, the team followed her. Drop a, if you've ever had to trust your gut under pressure. Ever been told it wasn't your call until the moment no one else knew what to do. Hit like, they reached the ridge by 0437. Dawn had just begun to kiss the rim of the canyon, lighting up the stone in pale gold. From her new vantage point, she laid prone against the rocks, wrapping her cheek around her rifle like it was a familiar prayer. Targets were visible, just barely. 2 were posted near a makeshift comms tower, one scanning erratically, the other nodding as if barely awake. She watched. Breathed. The mission wasn't to kill. Order yet. They were here for recon. Confirm presence. Extract footage. Secure samples. But she knew the moment they moved too close to the tower, the math would change. It always did. So she tracked, memorized patterns, calculated angles, and waited. They didn't send Kate on this op. He was still back at base, brooding behind mirrored shades and bruised pride. She hadn't seen him since the playback in the command tent, but she'd overheard the second team refer to her new post as a test run, a chance to see what she could do on her own. She didn't need the validation, but she would take the opportunity. The first alert came at 0510. Footsteps 3, maybe 4 sets moving from the far trailhead. Not fast, not quiet. Casual, but not careless. One of them had a drone case slung over his back. Another checked a SAT device every few paces. They weren't tourists. They weren't scouts. They were the reason the outpost hadn't been marked as hot, because it had been marked as new, unlisted, unmapped, unreported. She keyed the come. "Brooks, we have contact." "Confirm, do not engage until I call it." He replied instantly. Copy. They crested the edge of her range. She watched. Two of them set up a tripod. Another planted something in the ground. Signal relay, she thought. This wasn't an outpost. It was the beginning of a launch point, a relay station. And if they let them finish that installation, everything they were trying to intercept would become invisible. She fired the first shot. Not a kill. A warning. It struck the edge of the tripod, clean and loud, causing one of the men to fall backward and shout in confusion. They scattered. Two ran. One pulled a weapon. That one, she dropped. The others dove behind the ridge. Brooks called it. In. The op was now active. And she was already sighting in the path they'd flee. The firefight lasted 13 minutes. No casualties on their side. 4 down. One captured. The captured man had a hard drive in his pack encrypted. Fireproof. Still warm from being active. And the report, the one filed just after extraction, listed her name first. First in. First. To identify. First to engage. And this time. The credit stuck. Back at base. She found a folded sheet tucked into her locker. No signature. Just 6 words scribbled in uneven Sharpie. You got lucky. Won't happen twice. She didn't need to guess who sent it. She just placed it beside her sidearm and smiled, because she wasn't here to be lucky. She was here to be legendary. The message didn't rattle her. It reminded her that there were eyes on her now, watching not just her shots, but her steps. Not just her instincts, but her influence. And influence, she knew, had a price. The hard drive from the relay. Sight was encrypted so deeply that base intel had to fly in an outside contractor. A quiet, long-bearded analyst named Leaf, who spoke like every word cost him money. He sat up in the corner of the comms tent and barely looked up while the rest of the squad circled the mission board. Waiting. She leaned back against a crate, boots crossed, rifle cradled in her lap. No one had spoken to her directly, yet not even Brooks, who seemed busy not making eye contact. When the decryption cracked, the room went quiet, then darker. Inside the drive, layouts. Not 1 base, but 7. Not 1 op, but 5. And not recon. Recruitment. Targets. Field medics. Technicians, linguists, ex-operatives. Some names were flagged in red. Some were marked as already approached. Some were marked as no longer responsive. And one was marked as converted. Drop A. If you've ever found out someone you trusted was working both sides, hit like if your instincts ever saved you before the proof arrived. Her name wasn't on the list, but Cade's was, not confirmed. Not approached, just listed under a single word, candidate. Her breath slowed. She could feel the eyes of half the team shifting in her direction, wondering if she'd noticed, if she'd react. She did neither. She just stepped forward. A sign. Me to the next intercept, she said. Voice like glass. Left looked up for the first time. The next site's in Jara, remote, high altitude, narrow access window. You'd be exposed. Then let's not waste it. The chopper ride-in was brutal. Thin air, fast descent. The kind of landing where rotors chop dust so fine it becomes breathless fog. They touched down on a slanted plateau, and before the blades stopped spinning, she was already moving. No backup. Just her. The assignment wasn't Black Ops, but it wasn't public either. No body cams, no audio feeds. Just mission start and mission end. She slid down the slope on one side, tracking movement with a compact thermal monocle. Signals pinged low on the ridge. 2 heat blooms, 1 intermittent. Possibly a guard with a radio. She went low. Then lower. The wind shifted as she approached the crest. Dry, metallic. Then a whisper. Not a sound, a motion. A hand signal. Sharp, familiar. She froze. Her scope caught it again. 2 fingers. Horizontal. A signal she hadn't seen since advanced sniper school. A signal only one person used like that. Cade. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't on the manifest, he wasn't briefed. And yet, there he was, poised on a parallel ledge, weapon drawn, watching her with the barest flicker of recognition. He tapped his scope, then pointed down. Target, the gesture said. Then he mouthed a word. Mine. She didn't move, didn't lower her rifle, didn't respond. She scanned where he pointed, saw it movement. A convoy arriving late, no insignia, off protocol. Smugglers? Recruiters? Or worse, handlers. She watched the group dismount. 3 men. 1 woman. The woman carried a case. Heavy. Locked. Cade shifted again. Just enough for his elbow to glint in the light. He's broadcasting. She realized. Then another flash, a signal flare hidden behind the rock. Set on a trigger. It was bait. Drop. If you've ever realized you were being set up. Ever had to choose between calling someone out or calling the shot. She made the call, not to fire, but to film. She engaged the helmet cam override. 1 touch, and her scope feed went live to the secure archive. Everything Cade did next would be recorded. The nod. The flare. The radio click. The whisper. She could only hear the last word over the open air, not the mic. Now the flare ignited. The explosion was distant decoy, but it was meant to force movement, and it did. The convoy ran, except one. The woman with the case sprinted left directly into Cade's line of fire. And his shot missed. By inches, whether on purpose or not. She didn't wait to confirm. She dropped the woman with a tranq round from her sidearm. Non-lethal. Mission complete. And then silence. Cade was gone. No footsteps, no radio ping, no goodbye. Just vanishing, like a ghost who never belonged. She didn't report him, not yet, not because she was afraid, not because she doubted what she saw, but because the web was bigger than Cade, and if she called it in too soon, the real players would scatter before she could trace the threads. She needed proof, not just suspicion. Not just a video. She needed a network, a motive, a map. Drop a "if you've ever held the truth back because the timing had to be right." Comment. If you've ever gone it alone when no one else would have believed you. The woman she tranquilized. Cody name. Aspen woke up in the holding tent 3 hours later, eyes glassy from the serum but sharp. Beneath the haze, she didn't ask where she was, didn't ask who they were. She asked one thing. Did he get away? Not they. Not we. He. Aspen knew Cade, and she feared him. The interrogation was short. They didn't need the whole network yet, just the next point of contact. Aspen gave it under mild pressure. A name, a place. Race, Southeast Corridor. Thursday. Drop. That was all they needed, except no one wanted to go in. Rays was off-grid, no drone support, and no satellite coverage. Terrain too sharp for FLYOVERS. It required old-school extraction. Sniper-led entry. Brooks stared at the team roster like it might reveal a better answer, then looked up. You willing to run this? She nodded once, and this time, no one called her Sniper 2. The race corridor ran like a scar between 2 PLATEOS. Its narrowest. Only 2 feet separated the cliff walls, sharp enough to scrape gear off your back if you turned wrong. But it opened up into a basin, and that basin was where Aspen said the next meet would be. She arrived 6 hours early. Set up west-side. No tent. No cover. Just a ghillie wrap and her rifle. She ate nothing, drank little, breathed slow. And when the first shadow moved across the eastern rise, she tracked it like a ghost slipping through fog. 2 figures. Neither was Cade. One was tall, lean, carried a ridge pack with satellite nodes. The other was bulkier, moved with the gait of someone who used to be military, knew how to clear a space without appearing obvious. But their mistake wasn't movement. It was pace. 2. Slow. 2 synchronized. Operatives. Not mules. They started setting up an emitter. She didn't stop them. She filmed them, tracked how long they took, counted seconds between keystrokes on the field device, noticed the code flashes mirrored The ones from Cade's laptop during prior drills. Same sequence. Same source. She froze the feed, captured the string. And then a third, a woman. Not Aspen. Younger, sharper. No gear. Just a tablet. She walked directly into the basin, tapped twice on the screen, and nodded once at the bulkier man. He reached into his coat, pulled out a badge. Agency issue, but old. Defunct. Ghost. Unit. He handed the badge to the woman. She took it. Nodded. And the lean one? He was filming, documenting the HANDOF. Proof. She sighted in. Could have ended it. 3 rounds. 3 shots. No survivors. But she didn't take it. She didn't come for blood. She came for names. And once the woman walked off, the men packed up. And left a case behind. She waited. 20-7 minutes. Then moved in. The case wasn't locked, just rigged. A false bottom. Dummy drive, but tucked behind the foam. A burner phone. Still on, still pinging. She extracted it, bagged it, evacuated. And when she handed it to Lef, he just looked at her. Do you want to see the text before command does? She didn't blink, only, if they're about me. He scrolled, tapped, scrolled again, then held up the screen. There was one thread. No names. Just this. Contact missed. Case left. Intercept probable. Asset remains. Still watching her. Still unsure. But she doesn't know what Cade's really after, and when she does, it'll be too late. She read the message twice. Not for clarity. For control. Because there was a threat in those words she hadn't anticipated. A suggestion that Cade wasn't just a runner, or a traitor, or a glory-chaser. He was something else. Something worse. Someone with a mission. Lef closed the burner's screen slowly, like it might explode. He didn't ask what she wanted to do next. Didn't have to. He just muttered, "There's a name that pings twice in the metadata. Same alias Cade used when he checked out those encrypted rounds last month. Name's Graves." She didn't react. Didn't blink. Graves had been her father's handler. The one who signed his final deployment. The one who vanished from the system a week after her father died. Drop of "if you've ever had to look deeper when the answer came too easy." Comment. If you've ever had to chase ghosts in broad daylight. The message was clear. Cade wasn't just freelancing. He was plugged into something built years before she ever joined the unit, and that meant she had to move before command caught up, before they pulled her out, before Graves buried himself again. She requested reassignment, filed it under Tech Liaison. Detail. Lef covered it. Brooks raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Maybe he knew more than he let on. Maybe he was just tired of trying to figure her out. Either way, she was in the air by morning. The old CIA safe house in Ankara was off book and forgotten. Not even a power line ran to it anymore. Just solar, satellite, and silence. But she had the coordinates. They'd been in her father's old field notebook, scribbled between ballistics tables and wind correction formulas. She arrived alone. No team. No cover, only a name on her breath and a rifle on her back. Inside, dust hung like lace, but someone had been there. Recently. The floor had boot prints fresh. One set, size consistent with Cade's, and the old corkboard had new holes. As if pins had been yanked just hours ago, but not all of them. One photo remained. She stepped closer. Her father, not in uniform, civilian clothes, sitting with a man half-shadowed. And on the back, in faded ink, Graves. 2009, Riyadh. She turned it in her hands, and that's when she felt it. Not emotion. Movement. The door creaked. Behind her. She spun, rifle raised. But it wasn't Cade. It was a man with silver hair, lean shoulders, and a face aged like war had burned through him. Graves. He didn't reach for a weapon. Didn't flinch. He just said, "You always were faster than your father." She didn't lower the rifle. "Why is Cade using your clearance?" He smiled. "Because I gave it to him." She Steadied her aim. Why? Because he asked the right question. Which was? Why did we let good people die when we could have done things differently? Her hand didn't shake. Not once. Your father, Graves said, believed in the system. But systems are built to protect themselves, not the people in them. Cade saw that, so did I. She kept him in her sights. You think betrayal makes you noble? Graves shook his head. I think knowing the truth and doing nothing makes you complicit. She took a step forward. Then tell me the truth. Graves walked to the corner, lifted a floor panel, pulled out a weatherproof binder, inside field. Reports, photos, letters, none of them standard issue, all marked with one name, Project Lockstep. It was an old op, covert, interagency. Started after the fall of Kabul. Premise was simple. Identify soldiers and operatives most likely to resist unethical orders and reassign them to high-risk missions where they'd likely be killed or discredited. Her father's name was on page 4. She read every word. Graves watched her. She was a medic, she murmured. My mother. She saved dozens. But she was never included in this. No, he said. She was the reason your father stayed. Because he thought if he stayed alive long enough, she'd make it safer from inside. And Cade? Graves paused. Cade was never supposed to know, but he found the archive. He wanted revenge. She set the binder down. Then why did he join them? Graves looked down. Because he realized you don't destroy a system from the outside. You rot it from within. She walked to the photo again. Her father's eyes smiled through the decades. And for the first time, she saw what he was protecting. Not a system. She left Ankara before midnight. Didn't take the binder. Didn't need to. She'd memorized it. And she had a new target now. Not Cade. Not Graves. Lockstep. The thing behind the curtain. The hand that moved the others. She wasn't going to expose it. She was going to dismantle it. One bullet at a time. The first person she called wasn't Brooks. It was Leff. Because Leff didn't ask questions unless the answer risked operational security. Because Leff had eyes in places satellites didn't reach. And because Leff owed her his life, even if he'd never say it aloud. When he picked up, she only said 2 words. Lockstep, Graves. There was a pause. Then the sound of a laptop slamming open. Then, give me an hour. She gave him 2. When he called back, his voice was lower than she'd ever heard it. There's chatter. Encrypted back channels. Someone's moving funding under a medical logistics cover. Same tag every time. Lusprot. Leff had already started to trace. The money flowed through 5 shell fronts, bouncing from defense subcontractors to research labs to supply vendors with no real inventory. One of the front companies had an old base near Bariko. Decommissioned, supposedly. Abandoned since 2012. But the electricity bill was still active, and the fuel logs showed deliveries every 2 weeks. Go. Quiet, she told Leff. No flags. No alerts. No comes. And if you don't come back, then burn it down. Drop it. If you've ever found the trail, no one else could see. Hit like if you've ever walked into the fire alone. She traveled under a different name. Used a cargo manifest from a canceled op. Took a jeep that wasn't logged. And by the time she reached the Bariko perimeter, she'd already been off-grid for 72 hours. There were no guards. No drones. Just a single motion sensor above the front gate. She disabled it with a mirror flash, walked 30 feet left, scaled the rusted fence, and dropped into overgrowth without a sound. The building looked dead, but it wasn't. She found tracks, boot prints, different sizes, fresh. And along the side wall an exhaust pipe. Still warm. She circled once, then twice, then found a hatch disguised beneath gravel. The lock was biometric, but sloppy. She used a microthermal strip from her kit, peeled the residual print, laid it flat. The hatch clicked. She descended into darkness. The hallway wasn't military. It was clinical. Painted white. Backlit. With soft LEDs, floor panels that absorbed footsteps. No signs. No warnings. Just silence, until a door hissed open ahead, and Cade stepped through. He didn't raise a weapon, didn't reach for comms. He just stood there. And said, "I was hoping it'd be you." She didn't flinch, didn't raise her rifle, just asked, "How deep are you in?" He shrugged. "I don't even know anymore." "Is this your mission, or theirs?" He smiled. "At this point, what's the difference?" Her grip tightened. "I need access to the server, the real one." "Where?" "The lockstep files are archived." He tilted his head. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you were going to kill me, you would have done it already." He hesitated. Then turned. "Follow me." They walked in silence for 30 meters. The hall opened into a hexagonal chamber. Cold core servers lined every wall, blinking. Blue and white, each rack pulsing like a heartbeat. Cade stepped aside. "Slot your ID chip." She did. And the archive bloomed onto a floating interface. She scrolled. Names. Cody names. Deployment. Zones. But more than that, predictions. Lockstep wasn't just blacklisting operatives. It was forecasting who would resist future policies. Future directives. Even future regime shifts. Behavioral profiling. Preemptive targeting. She whispered, "This is Minority Report in combat boots." Cade leaned against the frame. "Now you see it." She copied the archive, pulled the drive, turned to leave. Cade didn't follow. "You're not coming?" He shook his head. "Someone has to stay and keep feeding you intel. They'll know you took it, but they won't know I let you." She paused. "Then you better play it perfectly." He grinned. "Always do." She walked out, didn't look back, didn't run. But the moment she cleared the ridge, she triggered left's prearranged. Pickup. An unmarked drone. Low altitude extraction. No time for words. No space for second chances. 3 days later, she uploaded the archive to 3 separate dead drops. One in Geneva. One in Jakarta. Buried inside a dummy NGO site. And then she waited. Not for revenge, but for reaction. Because if Lockstep was watching her, they'd know she was no longer a name on the list. She was the hand that held the pen, and she'd just rewritten the rules. They didn't come for her that night, or the next, but she felt them closing in. Not with sirens, or searchlights, with silence. Her usual links went dark. Left's encrypted channels began to time out. One of her drop boxes was flagged for anomalous activity. She knew that meant surveillance, and at a fuel stop 2 days later, the clerk asked her if her name was spelled with a Y or an I, a question she hadn't answered out loud in 5 years. The web wasn't unraveling. It was tightening. Drop. If you've ever had to vanish when the walls closed in, hit like if you've ever realized the system knew more about you than you did. She relocated to a ghost town 30 kilometers north of the Kazakhstan border. A mining settlement turned empty when the copper ran out. No signals. No grid. Just wind, dust, and a bunker 2 meters below an old general store. She rewired the satellite dish with scavenged parts. She built a motion sensor, net out of drone scraps. And when the warning finally came, it wasn't a message. It was a file. Sent from Cade. No signature. Just a symbol, a hawk in flight. She decrypted it by hand. Inside, a list of 25 names, all current operatives, all flagged for reassignment under a lockstep derivative protocol, Echo Strain. These weren't predictions. They were executions. In progress, she recognized 4 names. 2 had trained with her. 1 had gone off-grid 2 months prior. 1, Yuri Darns, was still active. Embedded in a civilian protection unit in Western Sudan, she made her decision in 60 seconds. Packed her gear, dumped the backup, drive. And moved. The flight to Khartoum was rerouted twice due to unforeseen restrictions. She expected it, but she wasn't flying under her own name. and the intel Cade embedded gave her something else. A blind spot. A moment in the next 48 hours when Lockstep's monitoring system was due for server maintenance. Glitch in the God-view. She touched down as dusk fell. The heat wrapped her like a fist. She didn't mind. Yuri's last known coordinate was a relief checkpoint in the Bakari district. She hired a fixer with a motorbike and no questions. Rode through. Dusk into night. The checkpoint was gone. Burned. Collapsed. Into ash and silence. She found Yuri half buried in the remains of a clinic tent. Alive. Barely. His vest was shredded. One leg crushed under a fallen beam. He was bleeding from 3 places, but his grip on her forearm was still strong. They came from inside. He rasped. Then passed out. She stabilized him. Built a stretcher out of tent poles and torn tarps. Dragged him back 5 kilometers to the fixer's outpost. Paid extra to reroute him under a Red Cross evac alias. Then sat alone in the back of a gear truck, drinking salt water and watching shadows crawl across the ground. Lockstep had just escalated. They weren't profiling anymore. They were cleansing. She contacted Lef. Used the old method. 3 clicks on a forgotten forum thread. 1 buried Morse code string and a scrambled audio file of a Russian nursery rhyme. He picked up. You're alive. Yuri isn't. Not fully. I saw the ping. I tracked the IP that sent the execution code. Where? Rome? Tech Summit. 2 days from now. Every major defense innovator's gonna be there. And a new biometric vendor, showcasing predictive threat software. Prototype name, Echo Strain. She didn't hesitate. Send me in. Lef paused. You're not gonna like the face of the company. Try me. It's Cade. Droppa, if someone you trusted ever became the enemy. Comment if you've ever had to face someone you once admired. She entered. Rome under diplomatic escort. Not her own. Borrowed. A favor called in from a German field surgeon who owed her for a mission extraction years ago. He got her a forged ID badge and an invitation to the keynote showcase. She wore a sleek black blazer, heels that housed ceramic blades, and a thumbprint wrap made from latex scan copies. No one blinked twice. Inside the summit hall, Cade stood. Center stage, flanked by 2 holographic pillars. On one, a glowing map. On the other, lines of code, filtering through like weather patterns. He was clean-shaven, smiling, commanding the room. With Echo Strain, he said, we'll predict destabilizing agents before they ever act, before the thought becomes the threat. We don't just eliminate bad actors, we prevent them from becoming bad. The audience applauded. She watched. Not. His face, his hands, they trembled. He wasn't stable. He was cracking. And the moment he stepped off stage, she followed. Not to confront, not yet. To listen, because someone would meet him, someone he reported to, and she needed to see that face, the real architect behind Lockstep. The one pulling Cade's strings. She watched from the mezzanine. Cade exited stage left and disappeared behind a curtain draped in corporate logos. He walked too quickly, shouldering past a junior executive holding a tablet, barely nodding as a handler whispered something into his cum. His confidence had a crack now, fine but widening. She recognized it. The look of someone trying to stay 3 steps ahead of his own conscience. She tracked him through the hallway. Security cams using the back door left slipped her through the summit's mainframe. Cade moved past the green room, down a maintenance corridor, then paused beside a nondescript steel door with no label. He knocked once, then again, then twice more. Slow. The door opened from the inside. He entered. She logged the timestamp and started moving. Drop it if you've ever walked into a room you weren't supposed to. Comment if you've ever followed the truth into danger. Her forged badge got her access to the corridor. The steel door was locked. Biometric scan with thermal backup, but she didn't need it. She had the back route. Lef had found a schematic of the convention. Center built into an old UNESCO archive. There was a storage crawl space above the stage. If she timed it right, she could drop into the hallway 2 doors down. She waited, listened for the handlers. Footsteps to move away. Then dropped. The hall was dim, sound muffled, camera blind. She crept to the nondescript door and knelt beside it, slipping a microprobe under the seam. The audio feed buzzed to life in her earpiece. Not good enough, Cade's voice was saying. Another voice responded. Female. Sharp. You made a mess in Sudan. She's on to Echo. She already has the archive. A pause then. Then why haven't you neutralized her? Cade's reply was too soft to catch. The woman snapped. She was a contingency, not a partner. You're losing focus. Her stomach turned. Cade had sold her out, or tried to. She backed away, fast, slipped into the maintenance stairwell, climbed out. By the time Cade exited the room, she was back in the crowd. Disguised again, watching him from behind a mirrored pillar. His face was pale, jaw clenched, sweating at the temples. He scanned the room like someone expecting to be hunted. He was right. She didn't kill him that night. Instead, she watched, traced into a hotel 4 blocks down, waited in the adjacent building, watched him through a borrowed telescope. He drank half a bottle of bourbon, stared at his laptop for hours. Then opened a drawer, pulled out a file. She could only see the cover. Kinetic pre-clearance, name writer Lena. Her. It was a file about her. He didn't shred it. He burned it, watched it curl into black. Then fell asleep at the window. She was in his room by 3 a.m. No lock could stop her. She disabled the alarm, slid the window open, stepped over the sill like a breeze. He didn't wake up, not until she pressed the barrel of her suppressed pistol under his jaw. Then he blinked, didn't move. You know what I came for, she whispered. Cade nodded slowly. You're not here to kill me. Convince me. He didn't try to, just said, I burned the file. I saw, it said I had a window to eliminate you. That the system couldn't tolerate a variable. And you followed orders. No, he said. I stalled. Lead. I said I couldn't locate you. She lowered the pistol, only slightly. Who's the woman? Cade hesitated. Then, her name's Sloan. She was lockstep before lockstep. She helped write the first threat index models. Now she runs covert contracting ops under a dozen names. She's still running Echo? She is Echo. She stepped back. You're going to help me take her down. Cade shook his head. You don't understand. Echo isn't just a program. It's an inheritance. Every agency with black budget access has fed it. They don't want to shut it down. They want to franchise it. Then we burn it all. He looked up at her. Do you really think the world wants to live without safety nets? She narrowed her eyes. Safety's not the same thing as silence. They left Rome that night. Together, not as allies, as calculated risks, because Cade still had access. And she had purpose. Left rerouted them to an old naval server farm outside Seville, abandoned to the public, but still partially online. There, Cade claimed, Echo's route command codes had been written. She didn't sleep on the flight, didn't blink when they landed, didn't trust him, but she needed him. And when they reached the compound walls, Cade said one thing: you won't like what's inside. She chambered around. Neither will they. The compound looked like a mausoleum for forgotten wars. Weather-worn towers, concrete walls streaked with rust, sea air thick with the scent of rotting salt and old oil. But Cade walked with certainty. She followed 2 paces behind, rifle slung low, pistol loaded, suppressor attached. Every footfall echoed like a question she hadn't asked yet. They passed the old barracks, the mess hall, the infirmary abandoned long ago but not untouched. Doors re-welded, hinges oiled, motion sensors hidden in corners where the sun didn't reach. Someone had been maintaining it. Someone expected them, and still, she said nothing. Not until Cade paused at a blast door marked only by the letter VHE keyed in a 6-digit code. Paused for retinal scan, then pressed his palm to the sensor. Lock hissed. The door opened. And the air changed. Drop a. If you've ever had to walk into a room not knowing if you'd walk out, comment. If you've ever seen something you wish you hadn't. Inside. A data vault. Massive, circular. Dozens of towers. Spiraled upward like stalagmites forged from light. Each one labeled with numbers she couldn't parse. Metadata clusters. Encrypted arrays. Code trees 6 levels deep. It looked like a cathedral to surveillance. And at the center, a terminal. Old. Analog. Shielded. Air-gapped. Double quotes. No external signal. Cade said. You can only access it from here. And only if you know what to ask. She stepped forward. Let's ask. The first query. Lockstep plus progenitor. The screen blinked. Text scrolled. Origin. JSOCPHI. 2007. Executive clearance. Tier Zulu objective. Predict and prevent betrayal within elite ops by identifying latent dissonance. Methods. Behavior profiling. Operational stress simulations, staged field testing. Result: 53% accuracy. Project deprecated. Retest: Echo Strain, 2013. Adaptive. Parameters engaged. She frowned. JSOC initiated lockstep? Cade nodded. They shut it down. But Sloan moved it. Private. Smuggled the code through a cybersecurity startup that failed 6 months later. And kept feeding it data. Every deployment, every psych-eval, every glitch in command. Structure, they fed the algorithm. She typed again, lockstep plus active unode east. The screen flickered. Map appeared. Red dots scattered across the globe. Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, South America. Even one blinking in Montana. Cade whistled low. That's new. She leaned closer. The red dot in Montana had a tag, COV-94. She clicked it. That opened a dossier. Photo, her mother. Name, writer, Cora, status, activated. She staggered. Activated. For what? Cade read quickly. She was flagged as a soft node, meant to be a behavioral anchor. If your father rebelled, they'd monitor her reactions to map his likely path. But he's dead. Cade looked grim. Which means they think you're the next link. And she's the key to predicting you. She stared at the screen. Then turned. We leave now. They drove through the night, rented a private flight in Tangier under a false NGO banner, landed in Helena. 12 hours later, she didn't call her mother from the air, didn't message, because if they were watching, the only advantage she had was time. And surprise. The cabin hadn't changed. Same cedar walls. Same horseshoe of rocks by the front door. Same wind chime with the bullet casings. Her father's. Hung by her mother after the funeral. She stepped onto the porch, heart pounding. Her mother opened the door before she could knock. And froze. Lena? Hi. Mom. Cora pulled her into a hug that knocked the breath out of her. You're supposed to be overseas. I was. Are you in trouble? Lena pulled back. You might be. They sat at the kitchen table while Cade stood awkwardly in the corner. Lena explained. Everything. The archive. The protocol. Echo Strain. Cora didn't interrupt. Not once. Just listened. Eyes sharp, shoulders square, hands steady. And when Lena finished, she said only one thing. I've known since the day they showed up after your father's death. Lena blinked. You knew? Cora nodded. Quotes. They told me if I cooperated, you'd be safe. Cade stiffened. Cora turned to him. And you're the boy from the funeral, the one who stood in the back. I was new. I didn't know how to grieve. Him. No, Cora said. You just didn't know if you wanted to be like him. Lena stood. We have to burn it. All of it. Echo. Lockstep. Whatever's left. Cora walked to the pantry, pulled out a tin box. Inside, a hard drive. I've been waiting for the day you'd come home ready. Lena stared. What is this? Your father's last backup. Not mission data, directive notes. He knew lockstep. Wasn't dead. He left this for you. Lena opened the lid. Inside, audio recordings, algorithms, names. One stood out. Phase Omega, final lockstep directive. Cade leaned over. That's the original kill switch. Lena looked up. Then we're going to trigger it. They didn't sleep. Not that night. Not once the drive was decrypted. And the voice of her father filled the cabin again. It was deeper than she remembered. Slower, like every word had been weighed before spoken. But the message was clear. If you're hearing this, it means the wrong people have survived. You need to finish what I couldn't. And then came the upload sequence. An outline of every failsafe hidden inside the Echo Strain framework. Each one was a line of code, a pressure point, a moment that could either fracture the system or awaken it fully. Her father had marked them all. The last file? A fingerprint key. Hers. Drop a. If you've ever had to finish what someone else started. Comment. If a loved one's legacy ever shaped your mission. They relocated to a secure node left activated in Iceland, a geothermal vault once used to store encrypted genomic data. No roads. No signals. Just stone, snow, and silence. Leff met them at the edge of the drop site. Parka zipped to his chin. I hope you're here to bury it, he said. Lena nodded. We're going to collapse the whole structure. Leff looked over his shoulder. Then we better do it fast. The Echo architecture was global. Fracturing it required more than a single code purge. They needed to trip simultaneous feedback loops across 3 core sectors. Predictive behavior analysis engine, neural deployment matrix, command line. Threat forecast chain. Leff mapped the access paths. Lena loaded the directive. Cade rewired the integration mask so they could inject the kill code without triggering a backup. Alarm. It was surgical sabotage. Digital demolition. And once they started, there was no stopping. By hour 5, the vault grew warm. Server fans screamed as the old systems pushed back. Echo tried to reroute. To adapt. To predict. But her father's failsafes weren't just code. They were paradoxes, contradictions the algorithm couldn't solve. She watched its architecture fray in real time. Saw one node blink out, then another. Then a third. Montana. Southeast Asia. Bahrain. The red dots vanished. Then the counterstrike came. The vault's door triggered a failsafe. Cade pulled his pistol instantly. Movement outside. Leff checked the camera. 3 figures. No insignia. Civilian gear. Tactical walk. Not me. RCS. Echo agents. Sent to stop them. Lena grabbed the hard drive. Back route. Leff pointed. Tunnel behind the B-rack. It leads to a glacial fissure. You'll have 4 minutes before it seals. What about you? I'll stay. Finish the purge. Leff go. They ran, Cade leading, Lena behind. The tunnel was narrow, frozen, sharp with echoes. Each footfall thundered. Each breath burned. And when they reached the fissure, daylight gleamed like a knife. They emerged into blinding white. A drone lifted from the ridge. Pre-programmed. Silent. Waiting. Cade keyed the panel. They climbed in and lifted. Below them, the vault pulsed. Then dimmed. Then exploded in a silent plume of smoke and heat. They didn't speak for a long time. Just watched the red dots vanish from Leff's backup screen one by one, until only one was left. Sloan, Echo's architect. Still active, still hidden, but now exposed. Lena turned to Cade. Next stop? He nodded. Let's end this. Sloan wasn't hiding. She was hunting. The last red dot didn't flicker, didn't dodge, didn't relocate. It pulsed like a beacon. As if daring them to try. Leff's backup screen, now their only window into the system's pulse, marked the location with chilling clarity. Coordinates locked to a luxury biomedical institute, nestled deep in the Swiss Alps. Private, secure, government-connected, shadow-backed, and camouflaged as a research facility for neural trauma rehabilitation, but the name said it all. Echo Origin. Drop a if you've ever chased the lie back to its source. Comment if you believe the head of the snake always hides in plain sight. They arrived under cover of darkness. No drones this time. No GPS. Just boots on ice. Breath sharp in the air. And nerves coiled tighter than gun barrels. Cade scoped the ridge while Lena examined the guard rotation. They were efficient. Too efficient for a medical campus. 3 on the southern balcony. 2 by the intake dock. 1 roaming with a weapon. He didn't bother hiding. She marked their movements in a notepad. Cade tilted his head. You planning a siege? No, she said. A rewrite. There was a back entry point. Old maintenance shaft, sealed after the avalanche of '09. But Cade found the schematics buried in an Austrian utility log. They reached it by 0430. Cut the lock, slid inside like ghosts through a keyhole. The shaft led to sublevel 2, storage. Climate control. Auxiliary medical. They moved in silence, each hallway lit by motion-sensing LEDs that they disabled with portable blackout lenses. She used her father's field notes to calculate ventilation disruptions, to avoid trip alarms. Cade handled surveillance loops. By 0500, they stood outside the Echo Origin control chamber. And inside that room, behind 3 layers of glass and 6 of encryption, was Sloan. She wasn't what Lena expected. No lab coat. No icy executive chic. Just a woman in her 50s, lean and pale, hair pulled back, eyes tired but sharp, watching a wall of monitors. Fingers moving with the detachment of a surgeon charting vitals. Lena watched her for a full minute, then keyed the door. It opened without resistance. Sloan didn't flinch, didn't turn, just said, "You made it further than your father." Lena stepped inside. Cade stood behind her. "You've already lost," Lena said. "Have I?" Sloan replied, turning slowly. She looked at Lena like one might look at a museum piece that finally made sense. "You've crippled the network. Impressive. But networks regrow. You can't stop the desire for control. I can stop you." Sloan smiled. "You still think I'm the head. I'm not. I'm the librarian, the custodian." She gestured to the screen. Lines of code scrolled. Names, locations, predictions. The system still lived. "You didn't destroy Echo," Sloan said. "You fed it new data. You made it smarter." Lena's pulse spiked. Cade raised his weapon. No sudden moves. Sloan didn't obey. She tapped a panel. A countdown appeared. 259. 258. "Failsafe," Sloan whispered. "If I die, a burst. Transmission goes to the reserve hub in northern India. Echo rebirths, unfiltered, unchecked." Lena lunged forward. "Shut it down." "I won't," Sloan said. "But you can." She slid a tablet across the table. 3 keys. One is real. The other 2 are traps. Guess right, it dies. Guess wrong, millions go on the list. Lena stared. Cade cursed under his breath. It was a standoff of algorithms and ethics. And Lena had no time. She took the tablet. Studied the keys. Key A, labeled Omega. Key B, labeled Override. Key C, labeled Origin. Her father's last directive echoed in her ears. The truth will never be labeled clearly. It hides where no one wants to look. She tapped Key C. The screen froze. The countdown stopped. Sloan blinked. No one's ever guessed that. Because they weren't raised by a man who knew how to lie for the right reasons. Sloan backed away. Cade cuffed her. The system began collapsing, 1 line of code at a time. But Lena didn't stop there. She keyed in one final command. Upload to public ledgers. Left's backup vaults lit up. So did 22 Transparency Watchdog. Sites.echo was no longer a ghost. It was a confession. And the world was watching. The moment the first upload went live, everything changed. Within hours, Whistleblower networks lit up. Analyst forums. Leaked intel chat rooms. Even legacy watchdogs who hadn't stirred in a decade started broadcasting screenshots of code, snippets of name lists, audio clips from Lena's father's final directive broadcast in clipped tones, glitching slightly as the servers strained to handle the load. The world didn't just see Echo, they heard it, felt it. And for the first time, they understood how deep it went, what it cost, who it targeted. Drop if you've ever exposed a lie that others swore didn't exist. Comment if you believe the truth should never be buried just to keep others comfortable. Sloan was extradited. Not publicly. Privately. To a secured tribunal run by a multinational task force assembled within days of the release. Cade testified. So did Lena. She didn't hold back, not when she recounted the moment she saw her father's name marked expendable, not when she played the decrypted recordings, not when she described the list of 25 agents flagged for quiet termination. The panel went silent for 4 minutes after her statement. Then ordered a full deconstruction of all known Echo infrastructure and issued a warrant for every remaining executive who had signed off on the Phase Omega directive. Left disappeared 3 days later. Voluntarily. Left a single message on a secure node. Truth's out. My part's done. Don't find me. Lena didn't try. She let him go. Some ghosts deserved to rest. Cade stayed behind. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't posture. He just worked. Helped the task force identify buried strings, legacy caches, neural map backups. He even went back to the server farm in Seville to help reformat what hadn't been scorched in the blast. Lena met him on the tarmac the day he returned. "You're not going to run?" Cade shook his head. "I already did once. This time I finish it." She didn't answer, but she walked beside him the rest of the way. The cleanup took weeks, but the tide had turned. Internal reviews in 8 major intelligence organizations began. Old cases reopened. Families notified. Agents pulled from blacklists. Back pay authorized. Some were even reinstated. Her mother received a medal. Privately, quietly, but sincerely. Lena watched as Cora stood straight-backed in her old nurse's uniform, eyes bright with tears she didn't let fall. Afterward, Lena placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were the constant," she said. "And you were the storm," her mother whispered back. "You ended what I never could." They buried the hard drives in 3 separate time capsules, one in Texas. One in the Alps. One beneath the ruins of Echo Origin. Each with a message. One sentence: systems can lie. People must not. On the final night of the tribunal, Lena stood alone in a hangar. No applause. No cameras. Just her, a notebook, and the silence she'd earned. She wrote down the names of every person who'd been on the list. Then the names of those who never made it off. Then one more name: Cade. Not to forget, but to remember. How close he'd come. And how far he chose to walk back. The final report credited her only once. In a single footnote: operative assistance received from civilian contractor known only as Ryder. Clearance revoked. ID unconfirmed. She laughed when she saw it, because it meant they still didn't know who she was. Not really. And that was good, because she wasn't done. Not every system was. Echo. Not every deception so vast. But every truth was still worth finding, and someone had to be willing to pull the trigger, even if someone else took the shot. 6 months passed. The world moved on. Governments shuffled papers. Agencies renamed themselves. Media shifted its glare to newer disasters. Fresher scandals. Echo became a ghost story. But Lena knew better, because ghosts don't die, they hide. She still hadn't found all of them. Drop 'em. If you've ever known the job wasn't done, no matter what they said. Comment if you've ever kept going when everyone else called it finished. The file came to her coded as a postcard. No name. No return address. Just a street view from a town in Moldova she'd never been to. It arrived in a routine scan from an old surveillance node Lef once helped her build. When she decrypted it, one line blinked to life. One asset slipped the fire. Confirmed embedded. Alias, Dr. Vesa. That name had shown up once before buried in the Echo redundancy protocols. Flagged as strategic behavioral anchor, someone meant to rebuild should the system collapse. And now they were active. Worse licensed. Operating under a real credential. And doing so through a think tank funded by 3 governments that claimed to have no ties to Echo. So Lena packed her gear and headed east. Chisinau was colder than she expected. Steel gray clouds. Waned like broken glass. A city that looked half remembered by the world, which suited someone trying to rebuild the invisible. Dr. Vesa lectured at a university in Nex under the banner of Behavioral Computational Ethics. Lena attended the first talk in a borrowed coat. Listening from the last row, Vesa was young, early 30s, lean and deliberate. Spoke like every sentence had already been reviewed by 3 legal departments. His lecture was about predictive risk profiles for urban unrest. But Lena heard the code behind the words, the same euphemisms Echo had used. Just newer paint. She left before the applause, didn't need to hear more. She had the scent. She tailed him for a week. He never went the same way twice. Switched phones daily. Met only with people in public. Always smiled. Always shook hands. Never lingered. But twice she caught him glancing at reflective surfaces, not vanity calibration. Measuring his angles. Mapping shadows. He knew he was being watched, and still he stayed, which meant he wanted to be seen. By her. The confrontation came in an alley off a tram line, not planned. She bumped him. He didn't flinch. Just said, "You're not the first ghost I've seen." "Then you know what I'm here for," he nodded, "but not why." He led her to a rooftop. Old brick, cracked railing. Wind sharp enough to bite. He sat on the edge. Let his legs dangle. "You think I'm Echo's heir," he said. "You're not. I'm Echo's mutation." She didn't respond. He went on. "You killed the core. Burned the roots, but the idea? The belief that threat can be mapped before it manifests? That can't be killed. I'm not here to kill ideas." "No," he said. "Just people who carry them." She drew her pistol. He didn't move. "Go ahead," he said. "But it won't end me. There are 6 more like me, and they're better at hiding. I'll find them." He smiled. "You will, but not in time, because we've learned. Echo failed because it was too loud, too centralized. Now it's cellular, independent, adaptive, like a virus that remembers its last predator." She took a step forward. "I'm not a predator, I'm a witness. Same thing." She pulled the trigger. Click. No bullet. He'd jammed the slide during the bump. He was good, but not faster than her knife. She drove it into his thigh. Before he could reach for his belt, he crumpled. She whispered, "You don't get to lecture me. Not after Sudan, not after Seville, not after Rome." He coughed. "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." She pressed the hilt. "You forgot who you were talking to." She didn't kill him, not there. She handed him to the new tribunal office in Prague. Let them sort through his lies. She knew they'd fail. But that wasn't the point. The point was that she saw him, marked him, and now he was visible. 2 weeks later, another postcard arrived. This one from Tunisia. No words. Just a set of coordinates, Lef's handwriting, and a single initial. R. She smiled, because the story wasn't over, not yet. The coordinates led to a door without a handle. Deep in the old quarter of Tunis, sand-soft walls surrounded a narrow alley barely wide enough to stretch your arms. The sun hadn't risen yet. She didn't need it to. The moon was enough. She reached into the brickwork. Found the latch. Clicked it once. The wall moved. Just an inch. Just enough to say, "Welcome back." Inside was dust. Data, and one man she hadn't seen since the vault burned. Left. He sat behind 3 monitors, his beard longer, shoulders thinner, eyes exactly the same. He didn't stand, didn't smile, just said, "You found Vesa." "I did. He was the loud one." "There are more?" Lev turned his monitor. A screen flickered to life. On it, 7 names, 7 locations, 7 new problems. "This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story." She didn't sigh, didn't blink, just said, "Let's begin." Lev pointed to the top of the list. Lucian Marek, embedded in a counterinsurgency program out of Nairobi. Teaches battlefield decision-making algorithms to UN units. Believes ethics can be mapped mathematically. Leora Graves, based in Sao Paulo. Building civic trust forecasting. Tools for government rollouts. Predicts riots within 0.8 variance. Funded by old lockstep money. Kenji Ayoto, remote. Allegedly works on AI-generated military simulations. No public face. Sends proxies to every meeting. She read the rest, committed them to memory, then looked at Lev. "They'll scatter if I hit one. Not if you do it right." She went after Graves first, because sometimes you cut the root, not the branches. Snow. Paulo was loud, sweaty, vibrating with city pulse. Graves taught a workshop at a private tech conference hosted in a black glass building shaped like a blade. Lena watched from the audience. Graves spoke like a poet who traded metaphors for models. "In the future, we won't need to predict people. We'll simply remember their next decision before they make it." The crowd applauded. Lena didn't. She left before the last slide. Graves took a car service that night. Lena was already in the trunk. When the car stopped, she emerged, pistol up. Graves froze in the hallway of a penthouse wrapped in rain. "You," Graves said. "Me," Lena replied. Graves didn't argue, just opened a laptop. Tapped a few commands. "Here, my note access. I won't fight." "Because you're guilty?" "No," Graves said. "Because it's already too late." Lena narrowed her eyes. Graves went on. "You're chasing heads. But this isn't a hydra. It's a mirror. You kill it, and it just finds a new reflection." Lena fired into the screen. The laptop exploded. "I'm not here for metaphors." Graves didn't move. She cuffed her, took the backups, burned the rest. Next came Marek. He taught from behind bulletproof glass. So she sent him a gift. A dossier filled with Echo's full blueprint. Every dirty strand. Every buried kill order. Every collateral denial. He canceled his course that week. Flew to Geneva. Checked into a tribunal by himself. Made a deal before she even landed. She didn't meet him. Didn't need to. She'd already won. The rest took longer. Kenji wasn't real. His proxies? All synthetic. His voice? I hybrid of 6 old operatives. But Lev cracked the location. Lena got there before the wipe. He wasn't waiting. He was recording. A message. "Congratulations. Lena, you're everything we hoped you'd become." She erased him anyway. Months passed. Each node, a ghost. Each ghost, a code fragment. But they all led back to one truth. Echo wasn't a system anymore. It was a philosophy. A belief. And beliefs don't die. They adapt. So she adapted too. She stopped hunting names, started planting questions, leaking documents, exposing the patterns, showing the math. Letting the world decide. And it did. Slowly, sharply, with arguments and arrests and revelations that burned like fire through the bureaucracy. Until one day, a child asked in a school auditorium, "Is it true the government used to guess who was bad before they did anything wrong?" And the teacher said, "They tried, but someone stopped them." Lena stood in the back, didn't speak, didn't need to. Some legacies are better without signatures. She returned to Montana only once. To the cabin. The wind chimes still rang. The rocks still circled the door. Inside was quiet. Her mother gone now. Peacefully, softly, without fanfare. Lena left a notebook beside the tin box. On the first page, I took the shot. I made the report. And I never stopped writing. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.